إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue 6:40 p.m. Friday, November the 2nd, which agrees with 2018, which agrees with the Hijri calendar of the 22nd of the month of Safar, 1440 after the migration of the Prophet ﷺ. As we continue Kitaab At-Tawheed, and as we finished the chapter with the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until the fright and the horror is removed from the angels. As we finished the chapter, and we said that the whole purpose, or the munasabatul bab, as they say, the reason of why the chapter has been put in this book, in order to show that the greatest, or from the greatest of creation, who are the malaika, who are the angels, as you'll find that they worship Allah, they fear Him, despite of their status of what they have with Allah. As we know, the angels have a high status with Allah Jalla fil Ula. And likewise, from the head of them, who is mukallaf bil wahi, who is Jibreel alayhi salam, you'll find that despite of the magnificent state he was created in, meaning the magnificence of how the Prophet ﷺ seen him, and even Allah Ta'ala described Jibreel as being ذو قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين. As Allah Ta'ala also talks about Jibreel, saying that he's one that possesses might, ذو قوة, or ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين. We said that Jibreel is one that possesses great might. And notice Allah Ta'ala says about him, ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين. As you'll find that Salih says in Ibn Kathir, that he, Jibreel, is from those who can penetrate the 40 or 40 hijab of the levels of light that he could go past, meaning the hijab of Allah Ta'ala, as was mentioned in Tafsir Ibn Kathir, without the permission of Allah. So despite of this having this magnificent power and might, let me read it before everybody so someone won't be confused. As Ibn Kathir mentions, says, وقال أبو صالح في الآية جبريل يدخل في 70 حجابا من نور بغير إذنه أو بغير إذن. That Jibreel, that he passes and he enters in the 7 hijab. What are those hijab? The 70 hijab of light without any permission. What is the hijab? The hijab, as we know, of Allah Ta'ala is light. Because Allah Ta'ala has a hijab. He has a screen or barrier that Allah Ta'ala that He put. Hold on for a second, everyone. That Allah Ta'ala that He made with Him and between Him and the creation. As we know, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a Sahih Muslim, as he says, نور أن أراه حجابه نور. that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked did he see his Lord, in one narration it says, light, how could I see him? So they say that the light is the hijab, or the veil, or the screen of Allah Ta'ala. And we know the other narration where the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned and said that Allah's hijab, meaning the veil, is light. لو كشفه لأحرق سبحات وجهه ما انتهى إليه بصره من خلقه. That the also likewise the hijab is light, and if Allah was to remove it, so that the glorification or sublimity of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala would burn up everything that his eyesight reaches, meaning everything, because Allah sees everything. So the hijab is what, everyone? So the hijab, ya ma'ashul ikhwa, the hijab, like we said, and we distinguish, it said that it is the what? The barrier in which Allah Ta'ala, that He has between Him and the creation. And like we said, ya ma'ashul ikhwa, as the Prophet ﷺ said that when he was raised, or he was above the heavens, like we mentioned and said, that he mentioned and said about him, that how could I see him? All I see was light. So the hijab is what, everyone? Is the light of Allah Ta'ala, and the light of Allah is that hijab. And from the evidences and proofs likewise is what? In Jannah. You'll find that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, it says in paradise, that after it will be said to the people or the inhabitants of paradise, does everyone have of what the Lord Ta'ala is giving them? He says, Alam. Or as Allah Ta'ala says, do you have of what you want, of delight? And then we know that the inhabitants of paradise will say, may Allah Ta'ala ja'alani Allahu yakum minhum. May Allah make us and you from amongst them. That Allah Ta'ala will say this to them. He says, Turiduna shay'an azidkum. Do you need or do you want something that I increase you in? And then he will say, Alam tuthaqil wujuhana. Alam tuthaqil mawazinana. Alam tubayyid wujuhana. Alam tunqidana min al-nar. Alam tunajjina min al-nar. Then Allah Ta'ala, then the people of paradise will say to Allah Ta'ala, they will say to Him, do you not make our scales heavy? Do you not save us from the fire? And do you not make our faces white? Then it says in the hadith that Allah will remove the hijab. What is the hijab, everyone? It's the light. That Allah will remove the hijab. So all these are evidences and proofs, what, everyone, that shows that Allah has a hijab, has a veil, which is light. And that it will be removed in Jannah. And also likewise, like we said, even now, Allah Ta'ala has the hijab, has the veil, in which, like we said, if Allah was to remove it, everything will be burnt up, in which His light reaches, which is everything. So Jibreel, as it says in the narration, possesses tremendous might and power that Allah has given him and granted him. And from them is penetrating, as it says in Ibn Kathir, as Abu Salih mentions in the ayah, that Jibreel, that he enters in 70 hijaban. He says of 70 hijab of light, without permission. The kayfiyah of that, Allahu A'lam. But this is just a point to show how powerful Jibreel is and how Allah created him. And how might and strong he is. To have this type of what? This type of status and this type of power. And despite of that, Jibreel even falls in prostration to Allah Ta'ala. He falls in prostration and he falls into fear of Allah Ta'ala. And likewise, we talked about how Shaykh Abdurrahman ibn Hassan Ali Shaykh, that he mentioned in his commentary, that he mentioned and said, that he said that if this is the status of the one who created Jibreel, if this is Jibreel, if this is Jibreel and how he was created, if this was Jibreel and the magnificence of how he was created and the superiority that he is upon and the great status he has with Allah, he said that the one who created him is more greater and magnificent and powerful and mighty and sublime that cannot even be fathomed and imagined. So how can now that one turn away from the one who created this and embark upon something that he created? So that's one of the reasons and the sole purpose of why the great Imam put this ayah, or put this chapter in the book. all you'll find that the great Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab is removing the embarkment upon worshiping the creation and turning them away to the Creator. And you'll find that the great Imam, Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, in these chapters that we're going to speak about, all shows that everything of the creation possesses some type of what? Weakness. Or they have some type of what? Incompleteness in comparison to the perfect one who deserves to be worshipped, who is who? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all these chapters, Ya Ma'ash al-Ikhwa, establishes this reality, and likewise the chapter that's going to come, in which we're going to discuss and talk about today. So if you notice in your books, if you look in the new chapter of today, it says Bab al-Shafa'ah, the chapter of the intercession. The chapter of the intercession. So everyone understands the reason of why the chapter was put in the book, as far as the one that we just finished and concluded. Is everyone upon clarity? Anybody have any questions before we continue about this chapter that we just finished? Tafadhal. The ayah of, which is a sort of Takwir, where Allah Ta'ala said, ذِي قُوَّةٍ ذِي قُوَّةٍ عِنْدَ ذِي الْعَرْشِ مَكِينٍ. He said that the one who possesses might. He said, with the ones who possess the arsh, that ayah, which is a sort of Takwir, it's in that, the tafsir, Ibn Kathir mentions that in his tafsir. Any questions before we move on about the chapter? Anything, anyone? So after class, as soon as I close the book, I got a question. Anything about the question about the chapter that we just completed before we move on? Anything? Fine. Now we turn to Bab al-Shafa'ah, the chapter of the intercession. Al-Shafa'ah, ya Ma'ash al-Ikhwa. After we completed speaking about the angels, and how the angels are fear of Allah, and they worship Allah Ta'ala, even though they are ibadun mukramun, even though they are honorable, noble worshippers of Allah, and they do not do anything except by the command of Allah. Despite of them having this high status that they possess, and we know, like we said, they themselves are in fear of Allah subhanahu wa jalla fil ula, in which, like we talked about, if that is the case with something created, then they do not deserve to be worshipped. Then you'll find in the next chapter, Bab al-Shafa'ah, the chapter of the intercession. Just the word al-Shafa'ah, as we know, starts off with the meaning of it is what, everyone? Al-Shafa'ah, which means what? Al-Shafa'. What Shafa' means in the Arabic language, it means even. It means even. Something that's even. Where we know the opposite of it is witr. Where witr is what, everyone? Something that's odd. So the word one, wahid, is what? Is odd. Two is what? Is even. Three is what? Odd. Four is what? Even. So that's the meaning of a shafa'. That's the origin of the word shafa'ah. A shafa', which means a zawj, something that is even. How is a shafa'ah connected with the meaning, as we'll talk about now? As we know, the bab al-shafa'ah, al-shafa'ah means intercession. And it means that one take as a middleman, or one in the middle, and taking care of the necessities of those who are in need. That we know a shafa'ah, or intercession. Intercession is taken as a way to what? In order that you take a middle person between you and the one who you want to speak to, or a particular need you need, or a particular need that you want taken care of. And that particular individual might not know you, that you want to speak to. For example, a king. The king doesn't know you. He doesn't know your status, or he doesn't know, your need, or what's your endeavor, or the different types of difficulties. And he will not accept your statement because he doesn't know you. So you take a middle person between you and him that knows you. Not only do they know you, but his statement is accepted with what? With that particular king or that particular person who owns the job, or a person that's in charge, or a person that has some high status. So that person does not know you. So that middle person conveys to the one who's of that high status that this individual is true, I know him, and I can vouch for him, and I can say that he's a person that needs help. So based upon that, that middle person aided the one who needed the shafa'ah in order to what? Attain some type of benefit, and as we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, or in order to repel some type of harm or evil. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jay. So you'll find, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that it says in regards to these ayat. So ash-shafa'a, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, in Kitaab At-Tawheed, the mushrikeen, they used to worship deities along with Allah Ta'ala. And they used to mix up this affair of what they call ash-shafa'a. You'll find out of their ignorance and due to their lack of knowledge in this regard. Of course, we know the mushrikeen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ did not have any discrepancy in the belief of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, as we all know. That wasn't the issue. The issue is that they took between them and Allah mediators and intercessors. That was the problem. And that is where the polytheism creeped in. It creeped in from this aspect. So we talked about on many occasions that the mushrikeen, as far as in the first category of monotheism of Tawheed, which is what, everyone? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, they did not have any discrepancy in that belief whatsoever. The problem was in the second category, which is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah or al-Ibadah. That is where the problem emanated, and that is where all the mix-up and likewise the polytheism started to dwell in. That particular what? Category. Why? Because they used to take between them and Allah those idols or those people, whether they be righteous or wretched, as well mediators or intercessors or middlemen between them and Allah. That is where the majority of the polytheism crept in that particular what? Matter of what they call a shafa'ah. As far as in the aspect of what? Of intercession. Of the word, what they call a shafa'ah, which means intercession. You'll find that the people who embarked upon the worship of idols and statues, like we talked about before, you'll find in the ayat that the mushrikeen used to say that they are intercessors between us and Allah. It's similar to what takes place of today. Likewise, you'll find that, for example, the Christians say the exact same thing. They'll say, for example, in order for us to reach the Father, we have to go through the Son. Where they took Isa ibn Maryam as a what? As a mediator or intercessor between them and Allah. Then you'll find at the same time that they direct their worship towards Jesus, the Son of Mary, with the same type of claim that they say that we take him as a mediator or intercessor or a middleman between us and Allah. Well, they say God, of course. Then that is the same trick that Shaitan fooled the people of the book, in which you'll find that a lot of the Muslims of these days likewise believe. So the shafa'a, the shufa'a, or those, they say, for example, the polytheists, they are middlemen between us and Allah. And this is where, like we talked about, where the polytheism took place. So you'll find like all the different types of worship. You have to stop scratching your face, stop writing your nails, Caden. You'll find in the mushrikeen of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you'll find that they fell into affairs such as what, everyone? As far as in regards to all the affairs of worship, whether it be dua. What's the problem? Whether it be dua or supplication or istighatha or isti'ana, all these affairs of worship they used to direct towards those idols and those between those idols and those statues, you'll find that they directed their worship to them, to the idols and the statues and everything they associated with Allah, with the claim that they are just middlemen and mediators. That's the issue. That was the problem. Is everybody with me? Is everybody with me? Are you okay? He's fine. He's fine. But they took, and between them, directing all their affairs of worship to other than Allah, to those statues, to that which they pertain or what they declared as Allah, meaning that they worship along with Allah, with the claim that they are just mere mediators and intercessors between them and Allah. So in actuality, what is the reason why they fell into this? For number one, before we start talking in details about this matter, the shafa'ah is the affair in which not only the mushrikeen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ mixed up and fell into discrepancy in this regard, also likewise the Muslims of these days and times likewise mix up the affair of the shafa'ah, thinking that they're glorifying Allah, but however they're not realizing they are making mockery. If not, they are all reprimanding and putting down Allah Ta'ala in a manner that does not befit Him. How do they do that, ya ma'ashul ikhwa? For number one, we say this. Before we start getting into the details, there's a shafa'ah that's befitting for the creation, and there's a shafa'ah that's befitting for the Creator. That's number one. So you have the shafa'ah taliqu bayn al-makhluqeen, that is only befitting between the creation themselves. And we know the origin of that is permissible. As Allah Ta'ala says in His book, He says, مَنْ يَشْفَعْ شَفَاعَةً حَسَنَةً يَكُنْ لَهُ نَصِيبٌ مِنْهَا وَمَنْ يَشْفَعْ شَفَاعَةً سَيِّئَةً يَكُنْ لَهُ كِفْلٌ مِنْهَا. Allah Ta'ala, number one, of course we know, we have a shafa'ah that's pertaining to the creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, whoever intercedes a good intercession, he will have a portion of its reward. And whoever intercedes an intercession of evil, then he will have a portion of its sin. What in this ayah is Allah Ta'ala speaking about, ya ma'ashal ikhwa? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated there's a shafa'ah between the creation. That type of shafa'ah is just the example I gave about 6 minutes ago. For example, a person who's in need, and he has some type of need that needs to be taken care of. Or let's just say he's facing some type of hardship, or some type of difficulty in his life. Or if he wants a job, he wants a specific job, and that person comes to the person who's the owner of that job, or that person that has some type of high status, and the person of high status will say to him, I don't know you. Who can I trust so I can accept your statement? Who are you? How can I believe you? So that person who's not known will take a shafi', a person who's a middleman who can intercede for him, to vouch for his character, to vouch for his what? For him being an upright individual, to being truthful, to being a person that truly is facing some hardship in his life or difficulty in that particular time, and he just needs some help in order for it to be removed. So that type of shafa'ah, that middleman, he comes in between and he vouches and he goes to the person of high status and he tells him, until the person who's the mashfu'i ilay, or the person who's in charge, or the person that possesses that type of power, he'll say, okay, I accept the statement and I will what? Aid him, or I will help him. Based upon that he believed and found trustworthy the statement of who, everyone? Of the shafi', of the one who's the middle person. That type of shafa'ah between the creation is permissible as long as it's an affair of what Allah Ta'ala has made lawful. If it's an affair in which, like we said, a person needs something, and it's from those particular matters in which Allah Ta'ala has allowed for one to intercede in, then, like we said, notice and it says in the ayah, for a person that intercedes, that type of intercession, they will have a portion of its what? of its reward. طيب. The shafa'ah between the creation is one that is lawful, and then we have one that is what? Likewise unlawful. There's also an intercession between the creation which is unlawful. There's also an intercession between the creation that is unlawful. That type of intercession, for example, is interceding in a hadd min hududillah, an intercession from the penalties of Allah. Meaning that a penalty be removed from an individual even though he deserves it. Meaning that if we were in a Muslim land, and a person committed some type of oppression or some type of corruption in the earth. For example, stealing or murder or what have you. So that person now has reached the sultan or has reached the authorities that person has what? Has committed this crime. And it's been established with evidence and proofs that individual fell into this particular what? Evil or sin. So now, a shafi' or intercede, or person who intercedes, is now being utilized between the Muslim ruler and the one who he's supposed to establish the penalty upon. That person now is scared, so he says, okay, I want you to be one to intercede for me between me and the ruler. So this penalty could be what? Released. And this penalty could be what? Removed from me. If one takes this type of shafa'ah, this is the shafa'ah in which is prohibited. In which the ayah, as Allah Ta'ala says in His book, whoever intercedes an intercession that is evil, then he will receive the portion of its sin. And also likewise the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said alayhi salatu wasalam, إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُدُودَ السُّلْطَانِ فَلَعَنَ اللَّهَ الشَّافِعِ وَالْمُشَفَّعِ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had mentioned and said that if the penalties has reached the authorities, well, firstly it says in the narration, تَعَافَوْا الْحُدُودِ فِيمَا بَيْنَكُمْ. تعافوا الحدود فيما بينكم فإذا بلغت الحدود السلطان فلعن الله الشافع والمشفع. Firstly, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged. He says, pardon one another in the penalties. Pardon one another. So the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging here, what everyone? That one, forgive of a person that might have transgressed against you, if you truly want to do that. Meaning an act that would necessitate a penalty from the ruler to come down upon him. Meaning if a person stole from you, or if a person violated your rights or slandered you or slandered your honor, things of that nature, that which comes as a result of it, a penalty from the ruler, from the Muslim ruler. طيب, let's just say now that person who had fell into oppression took a middleman between him and the ruler in order to remove the penalty that he deserves. Here in this instance, this type of shafa'ah or this type of intercession is dispraised. It's dispraiseworthy, it's condemned, and it's not permissible. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, once the penalties have reached the ruler, meaning the authorities, then Allah curses the Allah Ta'ala curses the shafi' and the mushaffa'. The one curses the one who's the interceder and the one who he's doing it for. So Allah curses them once the actual penalty has reached the what? The ruler. That's the reason why he mentions alayhi salatu wasalam to encourage ta'afu al-hudud fima bainakum. He says, pardon one another in those penalties that's between yourselves. For verily, if it reaches the authorities, and there now the authority has to now issue a what? A penalty. Then here in this instance, Allah curses the shafi' and the mushaffa'. He curses the one who's the one who's doing the intercession and who he's interceding for. So here in this instance, what everyone? This type of shafa'ah is not acceptable. And it's impermissible, and it would necessitate that the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descend upon those two people. Another narration of that, which comes in the hadith of the one of the Makhzumiyah, of the one who stole during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And we know that the woman who stole was from a family of high status. And she was from a family of high honor or noble family that was known, in which her background, as they thought, would be a reason to remove a penalty. And we know the hadith where it says that he says that أن المخزومية صدقت في عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها سرقت فكان أهلها كانوا أرادوا أن يشفعوا فقالوا لا يجرأ على ذلك إلا أسامة حب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وابن حبه. As we know the hadith of Al-Makhzumiyah, who stole during the time of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, it says in the narration that when she stole, that the family wanted the penalty to be what? Removed from her. So they wanted to utilize Usama ibn Zayd, Usama, in which we know Usama and his father both not only were Sahabi, but they were also known as Hibbu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were also known as someone who the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved. And they wanted to utilize Usama in order to what? In order to intercede for the woman who stole. When Usama, they said that they wanted to utilize him in order to what? They wanted to say to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, to what? To remove the shafa'ah. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon that, when Usama came to him, the Messenger of Allah became very highly upset, until he said in the narration, he says, "Atashfa'u fi hadd min hududillah." He said, do you intercede in a penalty from the penalties of Allah? So to the end of the hadith, that we know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had mentioned and said when he climbed the minbar, when he climbed up on the minbar and he started addressing the people, where he said alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, as he praised Allah, and he said, of course he praised Allah, and then he mentioned this and said in the narration, he says, فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ إِذَا صَدَقَ فِيهِمُ الشَّرِيفُ تَرَكُوهُ وَإِذَا سَرَقَ فِيهِمُ الضَّعِيفَ قَامُوا عَلَيْهِ الْحَدِّ وَيْمَ اللَّهِ لَوْ أَنَّ فاطمة بنت محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم سرقت لقطعت يدها. As it says in the narration, that he says, for that which was from the affairs that destroyed the nations from before, he said that if one was prominent from amongst them, from one who was known to have a noble type of family, or they be from those who are rich or have high status, that if they was to steal from amongst them, they would leave them off. And if someone was deemed to be someone who was poor or impoverished or weak, he said they will establish the penalty upon them. So the Messenger of Allah had mentioned and said that this was from the affairs that what? Was a reason for the people's destruction. Then the Messenger of Allah said, he says, Waym Allah, I swear by Allah that Fatima stole bint Muhammad sallallahu, then I will cut her hand off. Which is to show what, everyone? That even though Fatima was the daughter of the Muhammad sallallahu, that still, that would not remove her from, if she would have fell into something of a penalty from the penalties of Allah, that will be removed because she's the daughter of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is to show that this type of intercession is what, everyone? Is not permissible. So you have two types of shafa'ah between the creation, where we know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said, Ishfa'u tu'jaru. Wallahu yaqdi ala lisani rasulihi ma yasha. As we know the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, likewise, where he said alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, Ishfa'u tu'jaru. He says, intercede to aid people, and you will be rewarded. And Allah will decree upon the tongue of his messenger what he wills. So that hadith is to show what, everyone? Wow. That hadith is to show what, everyone? That the shafa'ah between the creation breaks down into two types. Number one is an intercession that is permissible, and an intercession that is what? Not permissible. The intercession that is permissible is to what? Is to aid an individual that's in what? Facing some difficulties or some trials in his life, of things that he needs, and that he takes a middleman between him and that person of high status, in order to aid him or to remove some type of difficulty from him. That type of shafa'ah is permissible, as long as it's in the boundaries of Allah. And the other type of what we mentioned is said is the shafa'ah that is unlawful. For example, the shafa'ah of removing a penalty from the penalties of Allah Ta'ala. And also in affairs that are muharram. For example, of utilizing the shafa'ah or the intercession in order to attain something unlawful, in which Allah Ta'ala has made unlawful, and which, like we talked about before, is also from the affairs in which, if a person indulges in it, he will have a portion of its sin. So those are the two types of the shafa'ah that are between the creation, which is permissible in one manner and unlawful in another. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Does anyone have any questions so far? Does anyone have any questions so far what I'm saying? You have a question, Tariq? Oh. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Don't just say yes. Camden. You understand? Everyone understand so far? You sure I'm just saying what you're just saying it just to keep me going? I'm just saying it just to say it. Keep going. Huh? G. Type. Then you have now another type of shafa'ah. We'll have the shafa'at based upon the different sects of what we're going to talk about, inshallah. You have those who go to the extreme of the shafa'ah, and then you have those who are too lax in the shafa'ah, and then you have those who are in the middle course of the shafa'ah. So you have three groups. You have a groups that ghalaw fi shafa'ah. You have three groups that went to the extreme in the shafa'ah. Then you have the groups that are now too lax in the shafa'ah, and you have the groups that are in the middle course of the shafa'ah. طيب, who are those groups that are too extreme in the shafa'ah? Those who are the extreme, who are too hot, when we say ghalaw fi shafa'ah, meaning those who negate the shafa'ah. Who are those that negate the shafa'ah? Meaning from the deviant sects called the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. As those groups negate the shafa'ah. I don't know, the kids, we always have to get them some type of way where we can get them energetic during the classes. The shafa'ah in which you'll find. Tafaddal. We got to get you guys on my diet. On my diet, I don't think nobody will be able to handle. Huh? What, my diet? I said, no, I was talking about the kids in the diet. I said, I think my diet is a little too extreme. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله هذه الدعوة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمد وصيل الفضيل وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعدته. طيب. As far as the groups in which affirm the shafa'ah, we have three in which you'll find that are either too hot or too cold, or you, if you want to say, those who are in the middle. Shaitan, or you would say shaitan, has always found a way to make a person either too extreme in an affair, either too cold or too hot. For those who are in the affair, as far as those who went to the extreme, not only in the extreme, we would say that they who are from those who negate the shafa'ah. Who are those who negate the shafa'ah? Yarhamakallah. Who's those who negate the shafa'ah? Who are from the Mu'tazila and the Khawarij. The Mu'tazila and the Khawarij negate the shafa'ah. They say there isn't any shafa'ah. It doesn't exist. Because you'll find that they go to the extremes of what? What do they go to the extremes of why they're so hot in? Because of the ayats in the book of Allah, where you'll find that Allah Ta'ala negates the shafa'ah. In a lot of different ayats. Where you'll find that they looked at the text in the Kitaab and Sunnah with a blind eye. Not looking at the ayats that do affirm the shafa'ah. So there are ayats that they negate the shafa'ah, and there's ayats that what? That affirms it. They went into the extreme where they what? Where they looked at the text with a blind eye. You'll find that the text where Allah Ta'ala says in His book, talking about the shafa'ah, of how it's negated. It's just one ayat where Allah Ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا لَا تَجْزِي نَفْسٌ عَنْ نَفْسٍ شَيْئًا وَلَا يُقْبَلُ مِنْهُ عَدْلٌ وَلَا يُقْبَلُ مِنْهُ شَفَاعَةٌ. That you'll find that Allah Ta'ala says, fear the day in which one soul will not repay for another. And in the context of that ayah, Allah Ta'ala says, on the day where there will be no intercession. That ayah, you'll find that the Mu'tazila, the Khawarij, utilize to say that there's no shafa'ah. There's no intercession. There isn't any intercession whatsoever. From the Mu'tazila and the Khawarij, they negate it. Totally. You'll find that the concept of the deviant sect of the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila, everybody seems a little exhausted today. It's raining. There's yawning. These affairs are very important. Stay with me at Camden, Caden. Come on, stay in. Hang in there. You're looking at a brother that's exhausted too, but I just know how to channel my exhaustion and hide it very well. At any rate, so what I'm saying is in regards to the shafa'ah, you'll find that from the deviant sects that negate the shafa'ah. Why? Because you'll find that the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila take the ayat that were revealed as far as the kuffar, that was pertaining to those who are upon disbelief, and they applied them to the Muslims. That was their error and their problem. Why? Because they did not take their understanding of those ayat from those who understood it properly, who are the Sahaba. And having deep care and putting forth a great effort in utilizing the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to understand those texts properly. So all the texts that negates the shafa'ah, they took those ayat and descended them and applied them upon the Muslims until they say that those Muslims who commit major sins are in the hellfire forever, and they will not be brought out by an intercession, as we'll talk about inshallah. Just keep in mind, for number one, that those from the deviant sects that negate the shafa'ah are the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. That's number one. So they are those who are what? Too extreme as far as affirming ayat in the book of Allah that negate the shafa'ah. Then you'll have those who are too, if you want to say, they are too lax in the shafa'ah. Who are those who are too lax in shafa'ah? Those who are too lax in the shafa'ah are the mushrikeen. The mushrikeen of the Prophet during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The mushrikeen or the polytheists. You'll find that they took the shafa'ah of Allah Ta'ala, not only saying that the shafa'ah of Allah Ta'ala is affirmed, but however, they took the polytheists or the idols of what they're upon and the idolatry they were practicing, and saying that those idols or those are the middlemen between us and Allah, which is called shafa'atun shirkiyah, which is called the shafa'ah, which is a polytheism. So you'll find that those who are upon polytheism and idolatry in the religion or in their practice, or what they are upon, a falsehood, that their idols that they took between them and Allah was a mediator and intercessor in order to draw close to Allah. So they were now fell into another type of extreme where they were too lax in this affair. Too lax to the point where they fell into polytheism. Similar to that is like the Christians of these days and some of the Muslims. You'll find that the Muslims that they say that even those from the righteous, such as Abdul Qadir Jilani and other than them, for those who are righteous, that we asked him for the shafa'ah. You'll find that they even make supplications, calling on his name, calling on someone from the creation, not asking Allah. As we'll talk about how the shafa'ah is mulkun lillah, that the intercession is something that only Allah owns. And if he's the only one that owns it, then he's the only one that you should seek it from, not from anyone else. So the shafa'ah, ya ma'ashul ikhwa, is only sought from Allah alone, because he's malikuha. He's the one that owns it. So if the one that owns it solely alone, then he's the only one that should be what? Asked from. So the shafa'ah, which is what? Of the mushrikeen, similar to what the Christians or what they do of these days and times are pertaining, for example, with Jesus the son of Mary, where you'll find that they direct their worship to Isa. And they'll say that he is the middleman between us and God. Same thing of what some of the Muslims fell into likewise these days. You'll find that they say that Abdul Qadir Jilani and other than him, or whoever it is, of Badawi, or whoever it is from the creation, we ask him for the shafa'ah. And Allah Ta'ala has said in his book that this is the type of polytheism which the Quraysh or the Kuffar of Quraysh of the old fell into. And Allah Ta'ala has mentioned and said in his book that the mushrikeen has said the same excuse, where they say, لا نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى إن الله يحكم بينهم فيما هم فيه يختلفون إن الله لا يهدي من هو كاذب كفار. That Allah Ta'ala says in his book, they say we do not worship these people or these type of these idols or these statues or even those people from the righteous. We do not worship them except that they draw us close to Allah. And Allah Ta'ala says in this book, Allah will judge between them of what they differ in. And Allah does not guide a kadhib kafar. So notice that Allah had established a ruling upon their action that this type of action is kufr, and on top of likewise it's kadhib. It's also a lie. And it's also something that necessitates disbelief. So to take someone between you and Allah as a mediator, intercessor in worship, and asking that thing for the shafa'ah is the type of kufr and disbelief in which Allah Ta'ala has highly condemned and warned in his book, in which the mushrikeen of the past fell into, and even some of the Muslims of these days fall into likewise. Those are the other group, the second, that fall into being lax as far as what? As far as the shafa'ah. Then you have those who are in the middle course of the shafa'ah. Those who are in the middle. Those who are in the middle are Ahl Sunnah or At-Tawheed, where they put everything in its proper place. Where we affirm there's a shafa'ah that's negated, and we have a shafa'ah that's been affirmed. And we put both in its proper place. You have the shafa'ah that has been negated. What's been negated? Meaning from the people of polytheism in shirk. When Allah Ta'ala talks about there will be no shafa'ah for certain people on the day of resurrection, those are only for the kuffar. That's it. No more, no less. They are from the people who died in the state of kufr. They will have no intercession. There's no intercession for them on the day of resurrection. One of the kids, and I'm sure some of the children in here are asking, what is an intercession and what will it be on the day of resurrection? For number one, we will believe that there will be what? Allah Ta'ala will try. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection will save numerous people due to either them being from strong believers or some of them being from those who transgress certain bounds. Whether it be in that aspect of sins, of evil acts, or even in some type of discrepancy of i'tiqad, of belief. Both. Some of the people think that the hellfire is only for the kuffar. You'll find that the great Imam, Sheikh Muhammad al-Jami, rahimahullah, that he said that there will be a hellfire for the polytheists. There will be the hellfire on the day of resurrection for those who die in the state of kufr, those who die in the state of disbelief, those who die in the state of polytheism. That a hellfire will be eternal for them. نسأل الله يعافينا وإياكم من ذلك ويعيذنا وإياكم من حلول نقمته وسخطه وغضبه ويتوفانا وإياكم ونحن على الإيمان آمين. فنسأل الله يعيذنا وإياكم من عذابه وحلول نقمته وغضبه وسخطه. But in regards, there will be on the day of resurrection, Camden, there will be a hellfire. There's a hellfire of those who will abide in it from the kuffar. They will abide in it forever, never come out. Then you have another type of hellfire, or a hellfire, what they call Narul Muwahhideen. There will be the hellfire of the people who died upon Tawheed. Who are those who died from the hellfire of the people of Tawheed? Meaning that will be people from Ahl al-Qibla. There will be people in the hellfire from Ahl al-Tawheed who died, however, they had Iman, but they fell into certain acts in this world that they did not make proper tawbah from, or they fell into another type of fisk, another type of evil, of sin, which is of the belief system. What is those types of those who will enter the hellfire from the Muslims who died in the state, who will be in the hellfire of those who are upon Tawheed? Who are they? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned about 73 sects of his ummah. All of them will be in hell except one. Those people who died from his ummah, if they died with some type of discrepancy in their belief system, from some type of deviation in their i'tiqad, that is a type of sin. Deviance in one's belief is a type of fisk. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? That a person will have to be purified in the hellfire of those who Allah will put from the people of Tawheed, where they have to be purified of it. They'll have to be purified of it. Then they will be brought out of the hellfire from something called the shafa'ah, by intercession. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Is it clear what I'm saying? So you have two people who will be in the hellfire from Narul Muwahhideen, from the hellfire of those of Tawheed. Those who die, what they call fisk, i'tiqad, and you have fisk of the amal. You have fisk of the belief system, and you have fisk of the actions. The fisk of the belief system, such as from the deviant sects, from, for example, the Mu'tazila and the beliefs of the Jahmiyyah, or the beliefs of the Asha'ira, or the beliefs of Jama'at al-Tabligh, or the beliefs of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. All those type of beliefs that they're upon are discrepancy in the belief system. Where if one does not purify himself from those beliefs, and he dies in that state, he could be subjected to be what? Thrown in the hellfire, where he had to be purified of that type of fisk, that type of sin. So that's the reason why a person should be very careful who he takes knowledge from, or what will rectify his belief system. Because your belief system is the most important of what you keep intact. The point that we're trying to mention is, ma'ashal ikhwa, those people who have to be in the hellfire and purified of that type of sin, they will be pulled out by something called the shafa'ah, by the intercession. You have another type of people who will be in the hellfire, meaning from the people in the hellfire of Tawheed, of those who will be brought out. Meaning people who died in a manner who was from the people of Tawheed, but they had committed certain acts and major sins where they were, if they did not make tawbah or repentance from in this world, they will have to be purified from it in the hellfire, temporarily. Then they will be brought out. Also likewise. So it's not just fisk in the belief, it's also fisk as far as in the actions of sins. Where may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us and you from being from those. From being in the hellfire for a split second. For those who died, for example, who are upon sin, for example, you'll find in Hadith Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, as we'll talk about later. Hadith Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, who the Prophet ﷺ had talked about the Jahannamiyin, the people from the people of Tawheed, who will be put in the hellfire. Because the only people that will be brought out of hell is the people of Tawheed. No one else will be brought out. There will only be people that's brought out who had an Adam's weight of faith. And whatever they did of a discrepancy, that either they had tainted their faith with, either in the belief system or in their actions, they have to be purified of it. Then once they're purified of it, they will be brought out and they will be put in the river of life. Then after they sprout out and then they have become purified, then they will be allowed to be enter paradise. Paradise is only for the tayyibin. And paradise is only for the muwahhideen. Paradise is only for the people of Tawheed. No more, no less. There are no mushrikeen in paradise. Anyone who's in paradise is a muwahhid. Anybody who's in paradise is the one who unifies Allah in his worship. Everyone. Because like we said, Jannah is Darul Tayyibin. It's a dar of the people who are tayyib, who are wholesome. And like we talked about before, the only way they will be removed is by something called the shafa'ah. What is the shafa'ah? It's an intercession. And those who will intercede from them is the prophets and the messengers and the angels and the mu'mineen and also the siddiqeen and the shuhada and the salihin. All of them will be allowed to intercede on the day of resurrection. There's a lot, as the Prophet ﷺ said in Hadith Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, شفعت الملائكة وشفعت المؤمنون وشفعت الملائكة وشفع الأنبياء وشفعت الرسل وشفعت المؤمنون حتى لم يبقى إلا أرحم الراحمين فيقبض قبضة فيخرج منها أقواما لم يعملوا خيرا قد عادوا حمما فيوضعون في نهل الحياة فينبتون كما تنبت الحبة في حميل السيل. To the end of the hadith. So the Prophet ﷺ had talked about that the angels will intercede, and the prophets will intercede, and the mu'mineen will intercede. There will be a shafa'ah for what? Shafa'ah for only the people of Tawheed. That's it. No more, no less. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? The shafa'ah is only for the people of Tawheed. The shafa'ah is not for the mushrikeen, the people of Kufr. And like what we'll talk about in this chapter is a connection to the chapter previously. We'll talk about, inshallah. Which also affirms that the malaika, like we said, comprehend again. And they have minds. Allah Ta'ala talks about the angels. He says about them, وَالَّذِينَ يَحْمِلُونَ الْعَرْشِ وَمَنْ حَوْلَهُ يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ وَيُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ وَيَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ رَحْمَةً وَعِلْمًا فَاغْفِرْ لِلَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَاتَّبَعُوا سَبِيلَكَ وَقِهِمْ عَذَابَ الْجَحِيمِ. Now, if this ayah is not a proof to show that the angels have understanding and comprehension, then what does? Listen to this ayah. Allah Ta'ala says in this book about the angels. He says, those who carry the arsh was around the arsh. He said, they glorify Allah's praise. يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ. And they believe in Allah. Listen to this. The angels seek forgiveness for those who believe, meaning, يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِلْمُوَحِّدِينَ. That the angels supplicate for those who are upon Iman and Tawheed. And listen to Allah. Allah Ta'ala gives more details. He says, رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ رَحْمَةً وَعِلْمًا. You encompass everything of your knowledge and your mercy. Forgive those who follow your one path. فَاغْفِرْ لِلَّذِينَ تَابُوا. Forgive those who make tawbah and they follow your path and save them from the hellfire. Isn't that an ayat that shows that they what? That they have comprehension and they think and they know. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And that they have understanding. Does it or does it not? طيب. Also, likewise, we know that the angels will be allowed to intercede on the day of resurrection. And their intercession is only for the people of Tawheed. That's it. No more, no less. Is it clear, everyone? طيب. That is the shafa'ah in which we're speaking about now. That shafa'ah in which will take place of the day of resurrection, in which will be utilized to save certain people from being punished. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? That's the intercession what we're speaking about. Is an intercession in which we talked about and which we're going to speak about now. Does Allah need it or not? We say absolutely not. Allah does not have a characteristic of of need. As we'll talk about, inshallah, how the shafa'ah of the creation, as we talked about in the beginning of the lesson, and the shafa'ah between the creation and the creator is totally different. And you'll find that the people who fell into being mixed up in these affairs, from the mushrikeen and some of the Muslims in these days, fell into error in this affair because they mixed up the two. They thought that that Allah is like the creation, and that the creation is like Allah in this affair. That's the reason why أَنَّهُمْ ضَلُّوا فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ. That's the reason why they went astray in this particular what? This particular matter. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? Is it clear or is it not clear? طيب. So those three sects, you have two who's upon misguidance and one who's upon what is correct. You have those who negate the shafa'ah from the deviant sects. Who are they? The Khawarij and Mu'tazila. Then you have those who affirm the shafa'ah, but they what? They now indulge in it in a manner that's illicit and it's not legislated. It's not legislated. Which is what? The mushrikeen. The mushrikeen. The polytheists. A person would say that's only for the kuffar. Do the Muslims fall into it these days? Absolutely. هل يقع في هذا الشيء وهذا التخبط المسلمون اليوم؟ نعم. Which we'll talk about, inshallah. That is the reason why we talk about Kitaab At-Tawheed. We don't talk about just happening in history. We talk about how we compare it to those who fall into it these days. So you can what? Avoid it. So you do not fall into it. Is it clear what I'm saying? Then you have the third type of shafa'ah, which is correct, who is in the middle, who's Ahl Sunnah, who they affirm the Shafa'ah for certain people and then negate the Shafa'ah for who? For certain people. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Then you have different types of Shafa'at, which we'll talk about inshallah next class. فنكتفي بهذا القدر وهل من سؤال فنستقبله الآن حتى نتمكن من إجابة بعض الأسئلة التي نستقبلها من قبل إخواننا الآن. تفضلوا مشكورا. ها What is it? The Sufiya are considered in certain affairs have fell into shirk. Generally, we say that they fell into polytheism, no doubt. However, do we now declare them to be kuffar? That's something different. But the act that they're committing, we say, is an act of shirk. Is it clear what I'm saying? That is an act of what the mushrikeen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ were practicing. No doubt. So the act that they're committing is an act of kufr. هل نكفرهم؟ هذا بحث آخر. والذي ترجح أن ليس لنا نكفرهم بسبب مانع حال بينهم وبين وصول الحق إليهم وهم علماء السوء. علماء السوء أضلوهم حتى أصبحت الشبهة هي التي تمنعنا من أن نكفرهم. Are they considered kuffar or not? Do we say that they're kuffar? We say no, because of a mani'. It's something that what? Protects them, or is a barrier that protects us to saying that they're kuffar. What is it? Because of a shubha. Because of an ambiguity or a doubtful matter. And that doubtful matter comes from those who are called evil scholars, who led them astray. But that does not now to say, what do we say that their act is an action of what? Kufr. But that's an action of shirk. But do we say that they're kuffar? We do not rush to say that anyone's a kafir. We don't say that due to the fact, like we said, unless those who establish it, number one, are Ahl Ilm. Number two, لابد من استيفاء الشروط وانتفاء الموانع. Therefore, certain conditions have to be fulfilled and certain barriers have to be taken off. From those barriers that now comes in between us and them of declaring them kuffar is, like we said, ambiguity, which is from the evil scholars that led them astray. That is the reason why we what? We do not declare them to be kuffar. The masters from the common folk from them, we do not rush to say that they're kuffar. But their actions is an action of shirk, no doubt. Anything else? Further. Oh, the hour go back again? Oh, I don't even know. Oh, wow. You sure? Is it Saturday night it goes back? It goes back Saturday night? Oh, I guess so. Well, what about this class? What time we pray? What time will we pray Isha Sunday? Sunday night. 6 o'clock. So we will have class around what 6:30? After Isha. Okay. Okay, after Isha. Any other questions about the class? Father Camden. I can't hear you. No, the Anbiya, of course. They're gonna be allowed to intercede. For certain people. We'll talk about that in details. There is some details in that. But the prophets will be allowed to intercede for certain people. We'll talk about that. I don't want to talk about that now. Tafadhal. Any other questions about the class? What's up, Rashid? I see something on your face. Allahu Alam. Allahu Alam. Well, we know that there will be shafa'at that will be done by the prophets and the messengers for each of their people who follow them, whether they be small or large. For example, the shafa'at of the Prophet ﷺ, oh man, we'll talk about that later. But for each people, there will be people that their prophets will intercede for their own followers and their own ummah, in their own nation, that their prophet and messenger will intercede for their people, for them. We affirm that. We believe that. That's frank in the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, شفعت الملائكة وشفعت المؤمنون وشفعت الأنبياء حتى لم يبقى إلا أرحم الراحمين. He says شفعت الملائكة شفعت الملائكة وشفعت الأنبياء وشفعت المؤمنون. That all of them will what? Intercede. We take the generality of the hadith. Because you got to think, if those who are righteous, and those who are from the martyrs, were allowed to intercede for certain people, the prophets and the messengers for all the more reason. You get what I'm saying, everyone? Because they are on higher status than all of them. From the righteous, from the martyrs, from those who are truthful, from all of them. They'll be allowed to intercede for certain people and bring them out of the hellfire. Meaning from those who are upon Tawheed, not upon Kufr. They'll be allowed. The prophets and the messengers, all the more reason they'll be allowed to intercede for certain people. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Now, Tafadhal. What's the problem? That's only one type of shafa'ah. That's one type of shafa'ah. That's one type. That's called the shafa'ah for Ahl Mawqif. That's only for the Prophet ﷺ. That's a specific shafa'ah. But there's general shafa'at for different people. But that shafa'ah is not to be brought out of the hellfire. That shafa'ah is only for the day of resurrection or the account to start. That's it. Because a person will say, what about that shafa'ah? That's for the kuffar too. And the mu'mineen. Then we would say the answer to that, that's only for the day of resurrection, the account to commence. Not for to save one from the hellfire. That's for it to start. So they can be relieved of what they're in, so the account and the reckoning can start. So it can actually start. That's it, no more, no less. That shafa'ah is only for the Prophet ﷺ. But you have other shafa'at on the day of resurrection for people who will what? Either be from the people of the major sins, or people that will be allowed to enter paradise without any reckoning or account. As you'll find that the message of Allah, as it says, we'll get inside all the narrations that talks about when the message of Allah prostrates. It's in your book. Then he says, oh Muhammad, raise your head to the end of it. It says, Ar-Razzaaq, sal tu'ta washfa' tushaffa'. Raise your head. He says, intercede, your intercession will be what? Granted. It says, فَيَحِدُّ اللَّهَ لِي حَدًّا. Allah will give me an amount of people to start off with, after I raise my head, a certain amount of people who will be allowed to enter paradise altogether. That's another type of shafa'ah. Then you have the shafa'ah of the people who will enter hell. That they won't enter it, and the shafa'ah of the people who will enter it, and they will be brought out. That's general for a lot of different people. All of that we'll talk about. It's all going to come, inshallah. But the shafa'ah for the people of Ahl Mawqif, that's only one type of shafa'ah. That's only for the Prophet ﷺ. As we'll talk about all that, it's going to come, inshallah. You have shafa'at that's for the Prophet ﷺ only. Only. That's only for him. From them is that paradise and the gates of paradise be open. The gates of paradise can only be open for the Prophet ﷺ, no one and no else. No from the prophets and messengers that the gates of paradise will be allowed to be open for except the Prophet ﷺ. That's it. Then you have, like we said, the shafa'ah of Ahl Mawqif. Then you have the shafa'ah of Abu Talib. We'll talk about that as it'll come, inshallah. No, it's not the time, brothers. And we know the affair of the shafa'as we'll talk about is mutawatir. That affair is mutawatir. We'll talk about that later. Stay doing until. Yeah, he's on until. It's all right. Oh, okay. Go back to the old method, huh? All right.